Greetings, fellow Whovians, and welcome to Timey Wimey Review. To continue my build-up towards the Power of the Doctor special, I thought I'd review the final story to feature former companion to the Doctor, Ace, which turned out to be the final story to be televised from the classic era of Doctor Who, Survival. First broadcast on BBC One back in November 1989. Just in case you don't know the plot, the Seventh Doctor takes Ace back to her hometown of Perivale to catch up with some old friends, which coincides with some very disturbing disappearances. People are being transported to another planet, the home of the Cheetah People. It's not long until the Seventh Doctor and Ace suffers the same fate. And to make matters worse, also on the planet is the Doctor's deadliest enemy, the Master. As the title suggests, Survival is all about survival of the fittest, and I really liked the subtle political subtext throughout this story. So, for example, you see one of Ace's friends holding a charity tin with the anti-fox hunting campaign going on there. Midge is a former friend of Ace. He sort of comes back and he kind of looks like sort of like an 80s yuppie, sort of telling all these people, it's either my way or the highway. It's very disturbingly similar to what's going on in the sort of Margaret Thatcher era of Britain. And also, like with all the closing down of youth clubs as well, it's slightly mirroring what's kind of happening in the political and global landscape in the UK today. It's definitely an interesting style of story presentation going on in this three-part adventure. When it tries to be funny, deliberately, I don't think it sort of lands. I do like the Seventh Doctor being with the former comedians Hale and Pace. That was quite good. And with the Doctor messing around with the stray cats in Perivale, that's kind of a little bit cheesy. What I did like was when the Doctor was explaining to Ace and the rest of the people that was on the planet who the Master is. I loved when Ace quickly interjects and go, "Don't you know anyone that's nice and friendly?" I thought that's a better sort of humour, which you kind of see sort of little steps of when it came back in 2005. I want to take a bit of time to talk about Ace, because she is basically the first, I would say, companion to have an overall story arc in Doctor Who. It all started off really with, well, a little bit with Dragonfire, that little sort of passing of the torch between Mel and Ace. But then it really sort of ramped up throughout season 25 and season 26. There's some really good stories. If you're not really too familiar with the companion of Ace, I do recommend that you check out quite a few stories, which I did mention earlier in the year in my Who is Ace and Tegan video. So do check that out. But I really enjoyed her story arc as a whole. And I think Sophie Eldred did a really good job with Ace. I met Sophie not too long ago at the Sheffield Comic Con. I've seen her in various Comic Cons as well throughout the years. But I thought, obviously, this year with Ace coming back, it was basically one, very excited for Ace to return and Sophie to return to the Doctor Who franchise in the Power of the Doctor in a few weeks. But also, I really admire and appreciate how much she has looked after this character for 30 plus years, and and you don't really see that much, that amount of time with sort of actors these days. They are sort of like pushed to, they are in various franchises, but then they move on to other things, and that's fair enough. But with Sophie, with the Big Finish audios, the books that she's wrote, I just feel that they really have, she really has looked after this character and really made it her own. And for a female character in the 80s, that wasn't really the done thing. So, this character, this companion to me, yeah, you can definitely see where the Rose Tylers, the Donna Nobles sort of spring from is Ace. And if it didn't work with Sophie at the helm, I don't think we would be sort of here today talking about this particular character. But back to Survival, I think there was sort of adding a little bit of an extra layer to her character, with the possible lesbian subtext. didn't overly see this when watching it and rewatching it recently. Ronan Munro, who wrote Survival, has said in many interviews that this was a bit of a lesbian subtext to the relationship between Ace and the cheetah people, or one of the cheetah people, Kara. And I, I do try and find it. I just don't overly see it. I don't know whether that was just more in terms of direction, or they were not brave enough to push that boundary. But let me know in the comments in terms of obviously the expanded media that surrounds Ace. Do you think there's some, if she's bisexual, that's fine, gay, straight, I do not mind at all. But I'm interested to see your character views on Ace. But what I do like from Survival is that character relationship between the Doctor and Ace, and that story arc and that building of that relationship. Because the Seventh Doctor, the one that we definitely all know and love, is the sort of master manipulator, and kind of sets Ace up into like these various sort of situations, as we've seen in The Curse of Fenric or Ghostlight. But to sort of mirror it in Survival, we also see the Master kind of having a bit of a companionship relationship with Midge, and how he uses Midge to kind of sacrifice him to meet his ends. And the Doctor kind of was, well, I think Ace wants to put herself in that situation, but the Doctor could have easily have done the same thing, but was like, nope, this is my fight. I've got to do with this. Where if you see sort of in previous stories, like Remembrance of the Daleks, Ace taking on the Daleks with a baseball bat and blowing up a Dalek with an anti-tank rocket, the Doctor could have easily have done that, but they gave it to the companion. So it was nice to see that sort of role reversal. As for Sylvester McCoy, yes, he is absolutely great in this story. Like I said earlier, I really enjoyed his interactions between the comedians Hale and Pace, and also the interactions with quite a few of the other characters in the story, like Midge and the Sarge, and obviously the square off between the Doctor and the Master. There is some scenes where I don't think this is personally Sylvester McCoy's strongest story. I don't know whether that's down to writing or direction. When he's standing and they're on the cheetah people, and he's standing around shouting out, "Don't move," and everyone else is sort of like running around attacking and things, it just, yeah, it just didn't quite work. I think if he went back, I think he would have maybe said those lines in a different way or performed it in a slightly different way. It just doesn't quite work for me. That also in that scene was he trips up one of the cheetah people and does that with the hat, and that's what I meant earlier. When it's trying too hard to be funny, it just doesn't work. When it's a bit more subtle, like Ace's sort of rapport that I said earlier, of like, why don't you meet any nice people, that's when it's more funnier. That's when you a better way of injecting humor into Doctor Who. I loved his sparring with the Master and that sort of final battle. And moving on to the Master, this is Anthony Ainley's final performance from the television series. He did sort of reprise his role for a Doctor Who Destiny of the Doctor's PC game in the 90s, but for the televised version of the Master, I think this is probably one of his strongest. Where I felt like this Sylvester McCoy is not his best. Anthony Ainley is definitely one of his strongest here. I think sort of towards, I know he only had like a short sort of appearance in the Trial of the Time Lord season with Colin Baker, but I felt those two masters were really good. And what I like about this master is he's very much an unhinged, not in control master. He is being basically seduced by this planet of the cheetah people. The more that he fights, the more that the planet or the cheetah people fight, the more the planet destroys itself, and he's been certainly consumed with all that sort of, the hunt, and becoming like them with the contacts and the fangs. Kudos to both Anthony, Sophie, Sylvester, whoever wore those contact lenses to be one of the cat people, cheetah people. That must have absolutely killed. Those contact lenses look very uncomfortable. But back to Anthony Ainley. I loved his sort of again, a bit of a role reversal between him and the Doctor, being that master manipulator. He needs the Doctor to sort of work it all out and find out a way to get off this planet. But you just know that the master is not in control at all. As much as he is like sort of trying to sort of get his inner psyche of not being consumed, yeah, he's not in control. I would love to have known how the master got off the planet. I think he kind of just, I don't know, maybe just with the Doctor disappearing, that sort of also sent the Master back to maybe Gallifrey or something, back to his, he wants to go home. And that's a nice sort of subtle thing. I'll give this story credit, the subtle thing of maybe the Master would have been transported back to his hometown of Gallifrey. He wants to go home. And when the Doctor shouts out he wants to go home, he's gone to Earth. There is a twinge of sadness to Survival. This was the final story to be broadcast from the Doctor Who original run, the classic era of Doctor Who. Not to be made, though, that was Ghostlight, but to be broadcast, it's Survival. And yeah, you can't help but wonder the big what ifs. If you've never seen the extra on DVD Endgame about sort of like Doctor Who's cancellation and what would season 26 have been like, do check it out. It's really good. And yeah, I just find it so sad, that Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred, after putting in all this work, and credit to the script editor Andrew Cartmel, and to a certain extent the other writers that were involved, and John Nathan Turner, they never got their dues of having that final farewell. Time, you can't really sort of rewrite what's happened. Me personally, I would have given Doctor Who at least one more season, because it was there. It was certainly, when I did my season 24 rankings, that to where we get up to in season 25 and 6 are total opposites. And the writing was really good, and I would like to have seen what had happened to the Doctor and to Ace. There was talk about her going back to Gallifrey to become a Time Lord, for the Doctor to think, we need to inject some humanity to Gallifrey. That would have been an interesting concept. But unfortunately, the higher ups at the BBC felt otherwise, and they just wanted to bin it, which again, something that I've kind of talked about throughout the year of like, yeah, okay, people are saying that the Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall era is not very popular, but and it's very sort of similar to the Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy era. They were saying, no, it's not very popular. But the difference between then and now is the BBC didn't really care, and they just wanted it gone. They think it, they Doctor Who was becoming a bit of a taboo for them. But now it's like, no, we need to look after this show. What can we do to help? And yeah, like I said, back to sort of Survival and that classic era. It would have been nice to have given at least one more season for Sylvester and Sophie and Andrew Cartmel and the team, just to sort of wrap things up if the BBC wasn't wanting to carry on with Doctor Who. I'm going to give Survival a TARDIS rating of 6.5 out of 10. It's not my strongest story from season 26 of classic Doctor Who. I think that belongs to the Curse of Fenric. But it doesn't mean it's a terrible story at all. When it works really well. There was just a few scenes that just basically just took me out of the story a little bit. Like I said earlier, that sort of fight between the humans and the cheetah people, the Doctor sort of standing around shouting, "Don't move," didn't quite do it for me. As well, there was a scene between the Doctor and Midge on the bike. That shot really well, and the explosion was really good. Just the payoff didn't quite do it for me. You see the Doctor sort of landing on like just a random couch, upside down with a few garbage bits. It just, again, I think that was more due to money and time. I do feel that Survival actually deserved an extra episode just to really flesh out some of the sub characters that are in here, because there were some really good ones like Midge and the Sarge especially, because I want to really see him go from this cool, calm, collective, no nonsense military person to basically falling apart. I felt like between point A to B just went with a blink of an eye. Part three to Survival was really good. It had a really good beginning, really good start, a bit of a rushed middle, just didn't quite work out, and then a strong sort of finale to it. But I think it would have been more beneficial if it had a fourth episode to really just flesh out those characters, really have those great moments between the Doctor and Ace and Kara, and the Master and Midge, and the Midge and the Doctor, and Master and the Doctor as well. Because that final battle was really good. Really liked it when Sylvester McCoy shouted out, "If we fight like animals, we die like animals." But I would say, do check out this story. I would recommend this story if you are still quite new to classic Doctor Who and you just wanted to get to know the character of Ace a little bit more. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts to Survival. Is this your favourite story from the 7th Doctor era? Do you agree or disagree with the show's cancellation back in 1989? And are you looking forward to Ace's return in The Power of the Doctor? Next time on Timey Wimey Review, my build-up towards the Centenary Special continues with the 13th Doctor two-parter Spyfall. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the cloister bell for more notifications, come say hello and follow me on Twitter @ReviewTimey, and do check out my other videos from the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. And as the good doctor once said, come on Ace, we've got work to do.